All right, hey guys, this is Angie, and we have a special edition of C.S.A. for you today. I am so excited to say the phrase, we have our brilliant composer, Nathaniel Blume, with us on the show. Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I am just over the moon excited. My whole crew has been like, are you okay? You doing okay? You're music nerding out right now. I was like, I'm fine. It's going to be okay.
Awesome. Well, the fact that I communicate to music nerds is also
So
uh,
much. I was
love it.
the person that was like listening to the Star Wars CDs and like the Pirates of the Caribbean score in high school
Yeah,
and things like that. So this is the best. I'm very excited. Thank you for taking time. I appreciate it.
sure.
So to start off, let's talk about how did you come to be involved with Prodigal Son? How did that work out for you?
So I worked on a show with Chris Fedak, who's one of the co-creators of
Hmm.
Prodigal Son. Before this, it was called Deception. It was on ABC, and I did that score with Blake Neely. And unfortunately, it only lasted one season, but it was kind of the start of a partnership with
Hmm.
Chris. And so when this show came along, I kind of already had that relationship started with him, and we kicked into the pilot with Sam as well, who's a super cool guy. The three of us get along really, really well, and kind of have a good language going, I think, for the show.
And that's great when you find people that you can collaborate with and you kind of already have that, like, I know what they're thinking, improvisational feel. I mean, that's just, you're already running.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And the nice thing is too, we've also kind of just built up a trust with each other, um, where when we spot an episode, which a spotting session for any listeners who aren't aware of that, that's where you sit down and watch the episode
Mhm.
before you start working on it and decide where the music's going to start, where it's going to stop, what it's supposed to do in that particular scene. And um and yeah, I mean, a lot of times they don't even have to say very much. They're like, you know what to do here.
You got that. It's fine.
Yeah. So so that's great. That I love that. They're very trusting.
And that kind of leads into my next question. So, what is your typical process like from script to screen?
In full disclosure, I typically do not read the scripts.
Oh,
There's there's so many versions that get revamped all the time.
yeah.
And once you actually get started into the season, things move very quickly.
Mm,
So I'm typically watching an episode for the first time at the spotting session,
okay.
and then I have about a week or so, sometimes longer, to do the score for that particular episode. And when it's really crazily moving along, that's rinse and repeat week after week after week. so uh so there's no time to keep up on all the different versions of the episode and things like that. So we'll spot the episode, and the next day I'll kind of go through it. My assistant Ling helps
Mhm.
me kind of go through. A lot of times there's cues that have already been written
Mm,
for a particular storyline or a character or something that we can kind of throw up against the scene, and I can say, oh yeah, I'll do that, or yeah, I'll take that theme, but it's got to be different because this storyline has evolved or whatever. um, and there's kind of a lot of planning in that regard ahead of time, just
yeah.
sort of knowing what I'm going to do. And then the writing process begins. And I actually, this season's been a little different. Usually I like to go in order, and I'll just
Mhm.
start right at the top of the episode and go to the end. But this season, I think the set pieces have been really interesting to me. I guess it once we get to Act 5, or Act 6 in some in some cases, like the exorcism scene, in episode 2, or like in last night's episode, or um, with the self-immolation scene.
Yes.
Uh, so in the case of those scenes that kind of are asking for something that's maybe a little bit different than what would typically be in an episode, I might start by writing that first. Um, and again, in the case of the most recent episode, the themes from that cue were then used all throughout the episode. So there was a theme for Ainsley's former etiquette school, and there was a theme for the creepy dolls and
Yeah, they
things.
were all kind of like child toy chimes or like child
Yeah.
piano. I was like, oh, it's so delightfully creepy.
Good. Yeah. So, and that was actually worked backwards. So that
Oh, okay.
big piece at the end was written first, and then the themes from that were sprinkled all through the episode leading
Okay.
up, sort of planting the seeds for that.
Right.
So it kind of varies episode to episode in terms of process, but once it's written, then I usually create a QuickTime preview
Mhm.
for the creators, Chris Fedak and Sam Sclaver, and they watch it and email me back with any notes that they have, and I address those, and it goes to the mix stage where they mix the music into the show.
So I know that the scripts are kind of frequently evolving. Has there been a time where you were kind of already past spotting and then it's like, oh, never mind, we're going to completely change the scene and we're going to need you to just go ahead and change all that you just
Thankfully,
did?
uh, one of the things, I guess there's a trade-off, and one of the big differences between film and TV is if you're working on a film, you're usually brought in toward the end. However, you're not brought in when there's a locked cut typically.
Mm,
So the cut's always evolving, and there's things like that happen all the time.
yeah.
Um, and it's amazing how they can change things editorially. They
Mhm.
might not even need to shoot something new, but if they edit a scene a different way, it completely changes the story.
Yeah.
uh, so that, I think that happens all the time in film. And with TV, and especially a network show like this, I'm typically getting a locked cut. So basically the only stuff I'm not seeing are special effects.
Oh, okay.
There might be something drawn in, or it might even just be a slug that says, insert explosion here, or whatever.
There will be fire.
Yes, exactly. But the timings and the story and all of that are pretty final,
Oh, well, that's
by
nice.
that point. Yeah.
So are you guys still in kind of full COVID remote mode right now? Are you able to do a little bit more in person at all? Or no, I assumed.
Yeah. um, which it is a bummer. One of my
Yeah.
favorite things are the spotting sessions. I love when we would, in season 1, we would meet in the editing bay. There's 3 editors that work on the show, and they trade off episodes. So for whatever particular episode, we'd be in that editor's bay, um, with the assistant editor, the music supervisor, music editor, sound supervisor, and then it varied. One of the creators,
Hmm.
or one of the creators and a writer, and we would just watch it together, talk about it, um, and it's just really fun to be in the room and be able to bounce ideas off of each other like that. Now it's over Zoom, not as fun, but
Yeah. The nature of the beast we are in at this
yeah.
point.
So, but it, we since we established our language, I guess, again being the best way to put it, early on, it's been easier to do things over Zoom than, if we were just starting
Yeah.
a new show together from scratch. But it's certainly not preferable.
Right.
And one of the things from the first season too is there were one, two, three, I think there were 4 episodes where we recorded a big string group on a recording stage in Los Angeles. And then by the end of the season, we still had a budget. We recorded remotely, but there's been none of that this season, unfortunately. So
Yeah, I mean, your hands are tied. There's not much you
yeah,
can do about it, you know?
no. So I mean, maybe toward the end of the season, an opportunity might arise where things are safe enough to do that.
Mhm.
Um, but that's another thing that kind of stinks, and it's unfortunate for the musicians too, who are out of work because it's just not, the conditions just aren't safe
Yeah.
to do that. So um but we've adapted, we've found a way to still tell the stories we want to tell, and I think so far it's going well.
It is going incredibly well. If you have not seen the fandom losing their minds collectively, it is going well, believe me.
Good. That's,
So I know that production has had some snow-related issues the past couple weeks. Does that adjust your time frame as well then? Because hey, we're not filming right now.
that is a good question. And if it does, um, I won't feel something like that for at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, so it's pretty delayed for you.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
pretty delayed. Like we just we're just finishing the mix for episode 6, which will air next week.
Next week. Mhm.
Um, and I think they filmed that a little while ago. And I wish I had more accurate numbers for you,
Not
but
that I'm gonna creep, but that may have been the last thing before break, before holiday.
gotcha. So it could
I
be. So
Yeah.
that gives you an idea how
Not
far.
that I know that stuff. That's not weird
Yeah.
at all for me to know.
No, 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 that's cool. I like that kind of fandom.
We're a very detailed podcast.
Good, good. But that gives you an idea of how delayed it is from when they shoot it and then it gets edited
Yeah.
a million times over, and
Mhm.
then it finally gets to me. Music and sound, being the last things to
So does
do.
that tend to be like a kind of a pressure cooker situation sometimes? I mean, we're still editing episode 6, like you're on the clock sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. And there's times where we've spotted, and maybe the network had a couple notes or something,
Mm.
so they're not able to turn over picture to me in the normal timeline. And so that kind of makes my time a little more crunched.
Yeah.
There was one episode last season, I remember. um I forget the exact circumstances, but Fox all of a sudden uh asked if they could air the next episode a week early, and, and that pushed
Sure.
everything, and gave me something like 4 days to finish an episode
Ooh,
or something
ooh.
like
Wow.
that.
Good
um,
grief.
yeah, those were long days, but
Yeah, I imagine.
but you know, when the network asks for something like that, it's not like you could say no, you just keep it.
Yes, sirs.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, thank you for putting our show on the air. It'll be there.
Yes. Tell us how high to jump, and we shall do it. So being a cellist myself, I was super excited to see. The minute I heard Dermot was coming, I was like, ooh, what will happen? And sure enough, it worked out. Was that something that you kind of immediately were like, excuse me, let's do this?
Yes, immediately, because actually there was a movie that I worked on with Blake Neely,
Mhm,
who I've collaborated with for a number of years. And there was a movie called Love, Wedding, Marriage. It was a very small movie,
mhm.
um, with Mandy Moore, and Dermot directed it. And it was at that time that I met him and knew of the whole, oh, he's actually a cellist and he's actually a YouTube member and all that. And he's actually played on these big film scores because he's friends
Yes.
with composers too. So, yeah, I knew as soon as he was cast. And I remember sitting in the room during a spotting session saying, he plays cello, and it would be really cool if he played his own theme. And they were like, what?
Like, yeah, let's let him play while he dies. Can that be something
Yeah,
we do? Like,
right.
yeah, that was so exciting. When I saw the behind the scenes clip of that, I was like, yes, they did it.
Yes. Yes.
That
Uh,
was awesome.
but yeah, cello is also important to me because my wife is also a
We
cellist.
are a special people. We
Yeah,
really are.
you are. There is a special
um,
place in my heart for cello.
I love it, especially when you can get out of like the Pachelbel moments where you play more than 8 notes over and
Right.
over. We're getting a little bit more respect in some scores these days. We get to play the cool stuff. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Um, so my biggest thing that I started out doing these analysis as written analysis, and then we shifted them into a podcast for this season. And one of the biggest things that I just absolutely love to lose it over was that we're the same theme and how it evolves and it changes. And it's different if Martin's present physically versus metaphorically and all this kind of stuff. Was that evolution of it something that you kind of knew from the get-go, we're going to do this and we're going to change it as we go? Or did that happen organically as it went on?
I think it's hard to say. I know that theme was received very well by Chris and Sam and
Mm-hmm.
everybody working on the show. And one thing that that is also something maybe the listeners aren't aware of is when I see the cut of an episode before it's done, there's usually temp music in it, which is where they've placed music that's either from previous episodes, or maybe they'll even pull something in from a film or something like that, sort of as a placeholder for people to watch, especially the network, so that they can watch the show with some sort of music behind it that
Right.
gives some sort of idea what it's supposed to sound like. And in that regard, I think the show theme, or the we're the same theme, as you call it, it would come up, all the time. And then
Right.
uh be like, oh, we should definitely put the theme here, or and it's been called many different things by different people. I think, like, some people call it the Martin theme, and some people it's just the show theme, or whatever. But that theme, yes, has always just kind of been a part of the identity of the
Mm-hmm.
show. And so it's almost like I kind of have fun doing a theme and variations with
Mm-hmm.
it throughout the show. um, Even in some more odd moments, like the uh what is the um I forget. I'm really bad with episode title names, but the noir episode where there's that seduction scene where
Oh,
Malcolm,
the pied à terre,
you pied à
right?
terre, yes,
Yeah.
that thing.
Okay.
Yep. So there's the scene where Malcolm is actually interrogating someone who thinks that they're actually going to have sex,
And it was a great cello part during
and
that. Let me
they're
just throw that out there because I
good.
talked about it.
That was my friend Steve Erdodi played that. He is awesome, and he is a legend in Hollywood. But that, even that cue there, I had fun. You can pick up on the show theme being played around with there. It's all throughout the show in various ways.
It's
Um,
almost like a version of whack-a-mole for me. Like, I'm like, where can I find it in this
yeah,
episode and what has he done? Like in Alma Mater, just during the title card scene, instead of having our typical little like bong, like it was like some little techno version. And I was like, oh, this is awesome.
yep, yeah.
It was
So
very
I hope that it doesn't ever overstay its welcome. So I try to find, I don't want to just, throw it in the episode the same way every time. Hopefully it's given a different light each time, and it's still interesting. But yeah, that's definitely a conscious effort to use that whenever possible.
So on that note, that is very much kind of like a Martin Malcolm theme. Are we going to kind of start sneaking in some Ainsley Martin theme of some kind? Are they going to start getting their own little,
Maybe.
yes, yes, wonder?
There might be a little nugget in the
Okay.
next episode,
Oh,
next week.
yay.
So you'll have to wait and see.
And
Uh,
then like our newcomers is like kind of Catherine Zeta-Jones get a little something. Is Alan Cumming maybe get a little something as you go? I know it's early. You're not really there yet.
yeah,
Um,
right, exactly. And I think that she's gonna have to have something super cool.
I
I
mean,
don't
yeah,
know
it's
what
Catherine
it's gonna
Zeta-Jones
be.
and
Exactly.
Alan Cumming, like icons. Come
I
on.
know. Yes, that. Oh man, when I I usually don't. I'm not privy to this kind of information, so I learn when you learn when it hits the, the news
You're
feed.
flipping through Twitter. Oh, sweet, cool. Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Like,
That's nice.
yeah, like we have a Oscar winner coming. Awesome. And then
Seriously.
yeah,
And a
Alan
Broadway
Cumming.
icon. Oh,
Yeah, right. Uh, Alan Cumming. And when I read what his role was gonna be, I was like, oh yes, this is gonna
the foil.
be. So
Oh yeah, we all just like lit up the internet. They're like, oh my God, they're coming.
yes. So I don't even have a spoiler for you on those. I'm not sure what that's gonna sound like yet.
TBD,
It's gonna be
TBD.
super cool. Yeah.
So during your career, you've worked on some really versatile projects. You have Prodigal Son, you've done like the TV DC universe, you've had era style stuff like Pan Am and the documentaries and all of that. So is there anything that like a type of project or a genre that you haven't hit yet that you're really like, I want to do this someday? Like this is something I want to hit.
That's a good question. I When I was at USC, I took a class that one of the instructors created, where he paired up animators with composers, and it
Hmm.
was really cool. So I met a lot of different animators, and we just did little short films together. And that's always been something that's been kind of on my mind as something
Okay.
that I would love to do, as a full length feature animated film of some sort.
Okay. I mean, that's kind of the one niche you haven't hit yet. I mean,
Yeah.
so go for it.
I would love that.
So while you're scoring, are there types of scenes that you they're just kind of more fun for you? Like are the dramatic ones a little bit more fun? Is it action? Are they apples and oranges completely and they're like kids and you love them all or
I'd say it's more like that. The good thing is that that there is that variety, because if I was writing all action scenes all day every day, I would probably go insane.
Yeah.
So I like the variety. I love how much this show has to offer, and then there's always the crazy scenes, like, oh, I get to score an exorcism this week, and
Yeah.
you want it to sound really epic and film like. I'm so in. um that I think the variety helps. I think, though, if there's a particular thing that I'm drawn to, it's probably um eh, action with more of like a thriller or
Hmm.
even horror slant to it. um
Which I mean, you're just sitting in your happy place at this
yeah,
point then.
exactly. Exactly. It's like this show is tailor made for me. um but yeah, that I love that kind of stuff.
It's so nice to have a show. I mean, it really is. One minute it's like stand-up comedy, like Adrisa in yesterday's episode, and then the next minute we're chopping off a guy's hand and there's an exorcism and we're pulling eyeballs out. So,
Right,
you got a little bit of everything.
right, right.
So who were kind of your biggest influences in choosing this career? Were there particular composers that you were like, these are my people?
I mean, initially it's the go-to that everyone says, which is John Williams.
John Williams. Yeah, I knew. Yep.
So because I grew up a trumpet player,
Mm,
and so when I first kind of really started noticing film music, um, it was like the trumpet parts in John
mhm,
Williams scores, and then that kind of translated to or evolved, I should say,
mhm,
into other action scores like David Arnold and Independence Day, for
mhm.
instance. I think also kind of like in that era of when I was being enlightened by by this whole other world. Um, and then I mean, I think as I grew up, my tastes evolved. There's Christopher Young, who I eventually got to study with at USC as well. Marco Beltrami, of course, James Newton Howard. I mean, I like pretty much everything. I don't discriminate really. Um,
Right.
and yes, I was that person in high school. Like my CD collection was film scores, and so
I thought I was like the old like my friends would get in the car and be like, "Do you have real music in the car that we can listen to, please?" I'm like,
okay.
but for the man."
Yeah. Funny story about that. Uh, I moved to Los Angeles in 2007, and my very first year, my wife and I had an apartment in Little Armenia, um, and we had on-street parking, and one that first summer there, I finally got a new stereo for my car, and I was so excited. And and one stupid moment, I left the stereo in view on
Oh no.
case plate.
Was it the clip on, clip off?
Yep.
Yes.
So someone broke into my car, stole that,
Uh, of
and
course.
and very obviously rifled through every single one of my CDs. Didn't take a single one of them. They were they were all film scores and things like that.
Who is this person?
They had no interest. so so thankfully,
I mean, horrible, but amazing at the same time.
yeah. So my CD
That's awesome.
collection was saved, but uh, that was quite the moment.
You're like, I'm really into music if this has happened to me at this point.
Yeah.
Um, so I know with COVID being what it is, this is kind of a unsure question right now. Are there any projects past like or during the hiatus of Prodigal Son that you have lined up, or are things still kind of sketchy in that department?
Right now, they are kind of sketchy in that
Mm.
department. I am working on the Flash still
Mhm.
with Blake, and that's going right now. And that should, I think there's 18 episodes this season, so and it hasn't even started airing yet, so that'll go for a little while. And then yeah, I don't know. We'll
Prodigal Son season 3.
I hope so. I love that show so much. So
Yeah,
uh,
we're pushing. We're grassroots this thing. Like, let's
yeah,
go.
let's go.
So what is something that most people might not know about you? Like hidden talents, anything kind of interesting out there?
Hmm. Well, one thing that I have talked about before is, and I forget, is it, I think Jess, who's on this show,
Mhm.
because I had listened to the first episode of this season. Um,
Oh, yay.
and she mentioned that she was a forensic science nerd or
Hmm.
something like that.
Yep.
And so when I started college, I was a trumpet performance and chemistry double major with the intent that I was going to do pre-med and be some forensic pathologist for the FBI or something.
Wow.
And that,
Okay.
may have been spurred on by my obsession with X-Files when I was growing up.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
uh, but that was something that's full on, and I'm still very much interested in that. Science in general is something that I'm always fascinated by. That but doing a show like Prodigal Son is kind of cool too, because it's like both worlds
You
collide.
can live vicariously a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to wrap it up, because I don't want to take too much of your time, I have some rapid fire questions for
Ooh,
you.
rapid fire. Okay.
Yes. Okay. First one, what was the last book that you read?
Oh my god, I'm so terrible at that. Honestly, um,
I will also accept magazines.
okay, magazines.
Yes.
Yeah, Variety.
What is
Yeah.
your favorite movie?
That's the hardest question, because that evolves all the time, I think. But the easiest go-to, it probably is Star Wars, an OG, like episode 4,
Yeah, the original
the
trilogy.
original. Yeah,
Which goes back to John Williams. It's all full circle.
exactly.
It's all meant to be.
Right.
Favorite sports team?
Definitely Los Angeles Kings. I'm
Okay.
a hockey fanatic.
Acoustic or electric?
Oh, acoustic.
Marvel or DC?
Oh, DC.
I told my crew, I was like, I'm going to ask him this. And then if he accidentally says Marvel, I'm going to be like, we'll cut it. It's fine. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah, exactly. Sort of backed into a corner there because I love both. But
Coffee or tea?
coffee.
Like straight or coffee with a lot of accoutrements?
I am definitely straight, and
Okay.
straight black coffee, and I'm sure that says something about me. I think there was one article I saw that said people who drink it that way are psychopaths, but
You have incredibly intense deadlines of music you have to meet on a weekly basis.
yeah, I don't even have time to put cream in there.
Yeah, we to do.
Right.
Endicott or John Watkins?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good question. I tell you what, I like them both for different reasons, but John Watkins scared me more, I think.
And Michael Raymond James is amazing.
Yeah,
As is Dermot Mulroney, but Michael Raymond
yes,
James was amazing.
they're
in
both
that part.
amazing.
Yes.
There was some raw scariness about it, because the thing with Endicott that was cool is that they cast Dermot because you could very easily like him from the get-go, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second.
Yeah, he's very charming. Like he's
dark.
very charming.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Watkins is not so charming.
no, never was from the get-go.
He's pretty straightforward about what his intentions are.
Yeah, I was freaked out.
And so I do have one final question. I read in an interview that you had used like the sounds from surgical tools as a percussion line
Yes.
before. Is there anything kind of new that you've done similar to that? Like other kind of exciting little tidbits you've done? Is that not something you've been able to do because you can't get into a studio as much as you would have been?
Well, it's not so much that I did kind of sit and think about that before season 2 started. Is there something along those lines I can do? If we're going to get into Ainsley's character, can we do something news oriented,
Mhm.
like a typewriter, say, whatever. And inevitably, I think that whole initial thing with the surgical tools just kind of happened more organically, and the more I sat there and obsessed about doing something different but along the same lines, the more I was like, this, it's just going to be forced.
Oh yeah.
So there was a little bit of new sound design, and there was a little bit of taking those initial surgical tools and taking the initial recorded audio and revamping it a little bit.
Mhm.
But other than that, I think I treat it more instead of like the surgical tools were an overarching percussive
Mhm.
effect used throughout the first season. I think in the second season it's really been easy episode by episode to approach them in their own regard. So like with the exorcism episode, there was a very church like theme. So there
Yeah.
was an organ in there for the first time, and there were chanting monk sounds and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then and yeah, so I think it was kind of more to look at those elements episode by episode rather than some sort of new element like that.
So when Ainsley is not this most recent episode, the one before, when Ainsley comes in to visit Martin, there's a very different feel to that music cue. In fact, that's what I nerded out and tweeted you over because I was like, this is amazing. Like it gave me like a very Thor Ragnarok feel.
Cool.
And when she came in, and I was just, oh, here we go. Like we're using all sorts of new things. This is amazing.
Yeah.
And just the whole fandom is noticing like this is stepped up like for sure. It's going
Awesome.
crazy, and we're very excited.
Good. Good.
Listen,
I'm so glad to
thank
hear.
you so much. We appreciate you coming in and taking time out of your very busy schedule, and just hoping to get you a season 3. And let's keep on with the absolute brilliance that you've given us. So thank you so much, Nathaniel.
Thank you. I really appreciate all those very nice, very kind words. And I will keep doing my best. I love this show, and it's a joy for me to see each episode and to try to come up with something that will just help enhance the story. So the fact that you are appreciating that and noticing it means the world to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.